Some of this is controversial, like within the foundations of Canada and leaders. One of the First Nations leaders, which some would call a prophet, to Canada, and others would, the history books would speak of him differently as a rebel, to the government and etc. But I would say a prophetic voice for what he stood for. As well, from Battleford, it was a place where I think they divided up 2/3 of the land of Canada. It was the governmental decisions were made from that place. So it's a very strategic place in the spirit. And of course, North Battleford, where the latter rain move of the Spirit happened. And all of that was connected to fasting and prayer. It was birthed by, and there's a book called The Atomic Power of Fasting and Prayer. It's a little booklet that you can find anywhere on Amazon or whatever, cheap. I encourage you to get it, get many copies, give them away to your friends. But this little book, the impact it had, started in California, and it was after this, I think it was Charles Hall, I believe the name was. I could be wrong on that. But he wrote this little booklet, and he had this revelation really on the power of fasting and prayer. And so he decided to write this little booklet and hand it out to the church. The church just started, there was so much oil on it. There was so much of the Lord on this. Just regular old, ma's and pa's, and they just started to step into these extended times of fasting and prayer and just read the testimonies, and it gave them courage, and they had courage in the Spirit, and they just jumped in and started doing it, praying and crying out for revival, crying out for souls. And they saw, like within the year, they saw these major ministries like Billy Graham launched out, Dr. Bill Bright, Campus Crusades for Christ, which is responsible, we're talking millions and millions of souls coming into the kingdom. That all spawned out of this thing of fasting and prayer. A lot of the great healing evangelists during those times, they all connected in. T.L. Osborne would have been one of them, and others that connected into this and started implementing it, and they seen the breakthrough in their ministries happen. So that little book made its way up into North Battleford, got into the hands of the folks up there in this little town, and they started actually just daring to believe God that as they stepped into this, the simplicity of fasting and prayer and agreeing with his heart, that God would do something amazing and send revival, and it exploded. The whole thing lit up, and next thing you know, you have a national, and I would say international move of God, because it just touched the nations.